So if you're like me, you watched Ron MacLean's monologue on Hockey Night in Canada, Coach's Corner, the first one done since Don Cherry's firing, where he made remarks about the quote-unquote you people, the new Canadians who don't wear the poppy, who don't respect the veterans, who don't respect the sacrifice. And a lot of people were tuning in to see what Ron MacLean was going to say. And from my reading on social media, most people are disappointed, and a big camp of those disappointed people are on the pro-Don Cherry side. They see Ron MacLean as betraying Don Cherry, as buying into the cancel culture, the PC culture, the SJW culture, the anti-free speech left, narrative that Don Cherry's a bad man and he needed to be fired. And they feel that Ron MacLean going on air like this was kind of buying into this narrative, and he hasn't protested hard enough for Don Cherry to keep his job and for Don Cherry's character assassination to be ended. But on the other hand, and I have to agree with this side more, many people have noted that the monologue read more like a positive eulogy about Don Cherry and less of a real discussion about why Don Cherry was fired, why that was the correct decision, and what Don Cherry did to hurt Canadians in his remarks. That was deeply missing. I get that there's some positive message there. MacLean and Cherry worked together for a very long time, longer than I've been alive. And so that when one of your pals, one of your colleagues, does something that you don't agree with, something that can be pretty ugly, you might still love them and respect them and view them as a good person. So I understand, even if I don't agree, why Ron MacLean felt it important to say some kind words about Don Cherry in this interview. But I have to be honest, Ron MacLean dropped the ball here. The majority of the focus of this interview shouldn't have been on Don Cherry and his contributions. What it should have been about was Don Cherry being fired for the right reasons and talking about why that happened. Don Cherry was fired because at the end of the day, he had remarks that harmed Canadians, that othered Canadians, that marginalized Canadians, that basically tried to create two camps of people. In a dog-whistled tone, there were the white Canadians from the small cities and the immigrant/racialized you people from the big cities. And those latter people were the ones that didn't honor the sacrifices and the contributions of our glorious veterans, of our glorious military. And they were the ones that were harming our country and preventing us from having this great legacy. And in saying that, he harmed a lot of people. There were inaccuracies with his statement, historical and contemporary, but it also created a situation where many people tuned in that night and felt, I am not welcome on this program. I am not welcomed in Don Cherry's worldview. Don Cherry sees me as less of a Canadian, as less of a contributor to this society, as less grateful as a member of this nation than other people, largely because of my status as an immigrant or my status as a big city person. And that's really troubling to me. And all of this is vital, not just because Don Cherry hurt someone's feelings, but because he's hurt one of the goals of Hockey Night in Canada, which is to create a national unifier through the game of hockey. Whether you believe that or not, whether you think it works or not, that's one of the goals of Hockey Night in Canada, historically and today, is to give a night of the week where Canadians from all walks of life, from all income levels, from every province and territory, can tune in, watch the game of hockey, talk about the game of hockey, soak it all in. That's supposed to be for everyone. And when Don Cherry goes on TV and he makes remarks like that, othering some Canadians, creating the grateful white and the ungrateful racialized Canadian dichotomy, he hurt not just his own career prospects, but he fundamentally damaged hockey as a unifying project, especially if he stayed on. Don Cherry keeping his job would have been a fundamental recognition that hockey is not for everybody, that Hockey Night in Canada and Coach's Corner is not for everyone. All of this is incredibly important to note. And I understand MacLean only has a few minutes and MacLean has, many things he wanted and needed to say, but this needed to be a much bigger part of the discussion. Don Cherry's remarks that night, but also historically, have been anathema to the idea that hockey is for everyone. Don Cherry has said awful remarks about women, about immigrants, about foreign hockey players, about French Canadians. He's used his show to argue in favor not just of veterans' rights and respecting veterans, something I think we can all agree on, but he's used his pulpit to argue for war, to argue for Canada to go to an Iraq war that most people now see as a giant mistake and quagmire. That's Don Cherry. Don Cherry has made his show political. He's made his show exclusionary. He's made his show discriminatory. And over the years, it became increasingly clear that he had no place serving as the unifier of a hockey culture for an increasingly diverse country. That's why he was fired. He should have been fired long ago, but that's why he was ultimately let go. Ron MacLean needed to say that because all we got tonight were allusions to the fact that some people were angry and a lot more discussion, frankly, on how other people were disappointed in him, how Bobby Orr was disappointed in him. And we got a lot of talk about how Don Cherry is still a good person. I don't need to hear how Don Cherry is a good person. Don Cherry can tell me that. Fox News can tell me that. Sun News can tell me that. What we needed in that moment was why Don Cherry hurt the very project of hockey as a unifying force in Canada, and that's why he needed to go. That's where Ron MacLean failed tonight.